Welcome, friends, to another installment of Strange Planet. Picture this, November 22nd, 1963, Dealey Plaza. A nation watches in horror as its young president is gunned down in broad daylight, and for 60 years, more than 60 years, they've sold us the same tired tale. A lone nut, 3 shots, case closed. But what if the real story is a heart-pounding conspiracy so explosive it could topple the pillars of power? Today, Robert K. Tanenbaum, a legal titan who stared into the abyss of the JFK assassination, drops a bombshell. Lee Harvey Oswald didn't pull the trigger. 5 shots, multiple shooters, a government cover-up so deep it's suffocating. So buckle up. This is the truth they've buried for decades, and it's about to blow the lid off everything you thought you knew. Robert K. Tanenbaum is with us. He's a legal legend with a career that reads like a thriller, a former New York homicide prosecutor who never lost a felony case. He took his razor-sharp skills to Washington in 1976 as a Deputy Chief Counsel for the House Select Committee on Assassinations, tasked with unraveling the murder of JFK, and what he found shocked him: a web of lies, fabricated evidence, and a conspiracy reaching the darkest corners of power. Best-selling author of over 30 books, Robert's latest, That Day in Dallas, Lee Harvey Oswald Did Not Kill JFK, his most explosive work yet, is a fearless prosecution of the corrupt forces behind one of history's greatest crimes, with decades of courtroom grit and insider knowledge, and he's here to set the record straight. Robert, welcome to Strange Planet. How are you?
I'm good, Richard. Glad to be on your show.
So, let's begin with the Warren Commission. You've called it a sham. Many people have called it a sham. If you had to pick one, let's say, the most glaring flaw in the Warren Commission's case, proving it was built on quicksand, what would it be?
Very simply, it would be a document that I was able to obtain from the CIA director at the time, John McCone. And he was responding to a letter from James Riley, who was the chief of the Secret Service. And McCone's letter in response was March 3rd, 1964. And he said that he was worried about leaks. Both of them were, because the country, they believed, wasn't ready to be told that Lee Harvey Oswald had been a contract employee for both the CIA and the FBI. And that started in 1957 when he was at Sugi Air Force Base, monitoring U-2 flights. You may recall Gary Powers got shot down over there.
Yeah.
And they denied it. They lied to President Eisenhower, the Secret Service, the CIA, and they said they don't have it. And the reason they were lying was because they knew that there was a mole that had information to get that plane down. And they tried to use Oswald as a cover to say that he was now leaving the government, but he had important information and wanted to share. And the mole never showed up. But what happened was, in the letter from the head of the CIA, McCone, keep in mind also, Alan Dulles was fired by JFK in 1961, and he appointed John McCone, who was very much a pro-Kennedy person, to take over. And McCone, in response to Rowley's request about leaks, and these were leaks that Oswald was very much an agent of both the CIA and the FBI. And in it, I will summarize it by saying that in this letter that McCone says that he's very concerned if any of this information were in any way disclosed to the wrong persons, meaning the media, it would erroneously claim that this agency, the CIA, and perhaps others were directly involved in the Dallas action. The Dallas action, as you know, is how they refer to it in the CIA as the assassination. And he goes on and he says, while the persons, this is a killer here, while the persons involved were in the employ of this agency, meaning the CIA, as well as the FBI, he goes on to say that this agency, it is impossible to maintain full 24-hour-a-day responsibility over these operatives. So one major piece of evidence is this confession, if you will, from the head of the CIA that they were involved in the assassination. The other issues here are that President Truman gave a very serious critique of the CIA in March, or rather in December 22 of 63. And he regretted, he said, very, very, very much that he permitted the Office of Strategic Services, the intelligence agency of getting intelligence during the war, that he permitted the OSS to morph into the CIA because the CIA is involved in operational and policy, and they use a military. They have their own military, and there's no oversight. And you may recall just recently, Mr. Schumer, in his wisdom, talked about how why President Trump wasn't so smart, he said, because he was taking on the executive intelligence agencies, and he said, they're like 100 ways to Sunday for them to get even with you.
Right.
This is coming from someone who's in charge of oversight in the United States Senate.
A threat, basically a threat.
Totally. The whole thing is a fraud. And then they had a major problem, which shows you how deep this thing goes. In December of 63, the Secret Service and the FBI found that Connally and JFK were hit by separate bullets, and they were shot within 1.9 seconds of each other. The problem was they kept shooting their mouth off that the Mannlicher Gargano was the murder weapon. But you can't get, because of the bolt action required, you can't get a shot from, that is to say, a separate successive shots from the Mannlicher Gargano in less than 2.3 seconds. Let me repeat that. The Secret Service and the FBI found that two separate bullets shot into Kennedy and Connally in the first flurry of shots, and they were shot within 1.9 seconds. But because of the bolt action necessary to separate successive shots in the Mannlicher Gargano, you can't do it in less than 2.3 seconds. So there goes the murder weapon. So what did they do? CIA ordered a staff attorney whose name is Arlen Specter, who I'm sure you know.
Oh, yes, former senator, but he was he had no forensic experience. He's the one that he concocted the whole single bullet theory, right?
Those were his orders. And Arlen Specter, of course, hadn't yet been DA of Philadelphia. But the irony here is that Richard Sprague, who asked me to go to Washington in October of 76, said to me that he had worked in the DA's office. He never said he worked for Specter. He said Specter was a joke. He never tried a case. He never investigated a case. And this is the big mark on the former DA of Philadelphia. He's the kind of DA wherein you deal with, in Philly when he ran for DA, he was a Democrat. When he ran for Senate statewide, he became a Republican. So there's no more to be said. But what happened was we wound up here with the single bullet theory, which on its face is contrary and invalid to science and offends our common sense. Why? Because the single bullet theory is as follows. JFK, in the first flurry of shots that took place at Dealey Plaza, he and Connally get hit in the back. JFK's shot is a downward track. You know what I mean when I say that.
Right.
The bullet that hit him came from a higher distance. It could have been standing up and he was lying down. It doesn't tell you the distances, but it says the track was downward. So somehow or other, for the single bullet theory to make any sense, which it doesn't, for the following reason. They then claimed as the bullet was passing through, and this bullet, by the way, was like 1,800 feet per second coming out of the rifle. And the bottom line here is that when the track was downward, they had to claim, the CIA and Arlen Specter, that somehow or other, contrary to science, the bullet moved vertically upward 11 degrees out his throat, out JFK's throat, and struck Connally in the rib and fractured his wrist and severed the tendon in his right hand between the thumb and his index finger. Yeah,
we remember we all remember that great scene, Kevin Costner playing Jim Garrison, going through the physics of this magic bullet had to turn left, then right, then left, then right. That's some bullet.
Yeah, it's a very, very clever bullet, but to go as it's traveling downward in JFK's back, again, keep in mind, from autopsy, we know, and all of this is in my book, from the autopsy, we know that the shot that hit Kennedy in the back was at least 5 3/4 inches, 6 inches below the neckline. So that bullet stopped and moved upward 11 degrees to get out his throat. And there's no more you need to say about that, because the entire probe was a pretense probe that, in fact, had a predetermined outcome. And that's what the single bullet theory is all about.
Right. And then we have this bullet that shows up on the, I guess, the gurney carrying John Connolly, almost in pristine condition, that then is determined to be the bullet responsible for all these images or all these injuries. This is Commission Exhibit 399, I believe.
It's a CE Commission Exhibit 399.
Yeah. Talking about the chain of custody of that bullet, I mean, after it leaves the hospital is quite questionable as well, isn't it?
No, it goes to the head of the secrets. It goes to the head of Mr. Opley. It goes to his head, who was formerly, he was in charge of security at Parkland Hospital. He was former deputy police chief in Dallas. And so that aspect of it is highly questionable. But with so many other major issues in the case, it's not something that I have ever really focused on, because it doesn't, in truth, it doesn't matter. The fact is the bullet struck. I'll give you an example. There's an exhibit that the government put out, and it took 5 shots, and to show you how the pristine bullet really was damaged. And the first 2 shots were in cotton webbing, so you wouldn't expect any kind of result with respect to deformity. The 4th and 5th shots, the 4th shot is a shot into a bone issue having to do in the rib, rather, of a cadaver. Mm-hmm. And it shows some deformity, not major deformity. But then they show you the 5th shot that severed the nerve and fractured the wrist of Connolly. And that shot, hitting his chest allegedly and breaking his wrist, is totally deformed, which is exactly the same things that they allege in the single bullet theory. But in the single bullet theory, the bullet is pristine. Yeah. It's not deformed. That's just another one of these major problems they had with the lies they were telling. But if one looked at Zapruder frame 313 and then at Zapruder frame 328, you would see the shots to JFK's head. And there's no way on planet Earth that the government could have proven that when JFK's head snapped back on impact of the bullet, snapped back and to his left and rested on Mrs. Kennedy's right shoulder, they have ignored that. They have ignored it, and they just won't talk about it, because even though they tried to set up 10 gelatine-sized skulls replicating a human skull, and they fired into it the same height, same distance, and so on, and guess what? All the heads went forward. They shot the heads in the back. They all went forward. Yeah. And then they showed you pictures, which I have all those exhibits are in the book. And in the exhibits, you see one of the skulls with half the face removed from the shot. And they say, this is exactly how JFK looked at autopsy, except there's no injury to JFK's face. So, but that's what they did. That's their operation. If you had, an operation of how you would deceive the American public, tell them any lie you want, and it's not going to matter. But people will think we did a fair job here. And it's shocking that after 62 years, they're still lying about this. So there you have it.
Robert Tanenbaum, his latest book is That Day in Dallas, Lee Harvey Oswald Did Not Kill JFK. Since the book's publication, of course, we've had some 80,000 pages of JFK files declassified and come out. I don't know if you've had a chance to sift through them. Anything in those 80,000 pages that you've read about or seen for yourself or heard others speak about that jump out at you?
Well, a lot of people, first let me say that the pro-government people who are infatuated with the lies, they're the speediest readers on planet Earth in history. They have taken 30,000, 80,000 pages and digested it. It's really phenomenal how they do that. But one has to be somewhat naive to believe after 62 years that the CIA, knee deep in this entire conspiracy with, you know, the letter from McCone and there's another piece of evidence I want to mention to you called minute metallic fragments. But it would be naive for us to believe that they hadn't washed clean at least 100 times every one of those pages. And it's been alleged through witnesses, some witnesses that who are working in the archives and so on, that some of the witnesses had that those who gave some testimony, they had their testimony changed by the CIA to favor their position. So there's no end to what the CIA is doing as far as putting forth a phony case. Now, one quick thing I'd like you to mention to you, it's called minute metallic fragments. It's a great piece of evidence. And again, I came at this from the point of view of trying the case. That's how I presented my book, is that I was trying this case. And I wanted to indict and convict those who lied to us for 62 years and to exonerate those who spoke truth to power. And the worst thing you can do in the justice system, as far as I'm concerned, and trust me, for 10 years, I tried more cases other than Richard Sprague in Philly. I prosecuted more cases than anyone on this planet. And the worst thing you can do as a prosecutor is indict and charge an innocent person. That's the worst thing you can do. And if you have any questions about guilt, go to the next case or continue the investigation in a serious fashion with detectives who share your point of view about search for truth and how important it is to pursue truth. And if this doesn't exist, you go to the next case. God knows there are too many cases to worry about going out of business. You're not going to wind up going to the beach some days because you don't have any work. So the minute metallic fragment issue is very important because it's a very important piece of evidence that totally contradicts everything the CIA did. And that's inside JFK's, there is a above the temple area, that's where the shot entered. Now, how do we know that beyond any and all doubt, other than watching it at frame 313 of Zapruder? Mm-hmm. Well, the way we do it is there are 3 skull x-rays taken at the archives of JFK's head. And superimposed on his head is this rectangle of where the minute metallic fragments are. And when I say minute metallic fragments, it's just easy for me to say to you, as I'm sitting here chatting with you, if someone shot me in the back of the head, there would be no minute metallic fragments in the front of the head. The minute metallic fragments tell us 2 things that are great pieces of evidence for the truth. And the first one is, it tells us the direction of the wound. So the wound in JFK's head over the right side passes through and down around above the temple in that area. And again, if I was shot in the back of the head right now, I would have no minute metallic fragments in the front of my head. So the other thing it tells us is the point of entry of the wound. Notwithstanding this great secret that the CIA and the Warren Commission people have of this the nonsense that they put forward, the lies, they have ignored this evidence. They haven't justified in any way, other than what I mentioned to you about gelatinized heads, et cetera, that in any way they could explain how JFK's head shot back on impact. And keep in mind, here's a good rule of thumb. In this case, watch his head, because his head moves his body. It's not the body moving and his head moving. His head is moving from the impact of the force that has been applied to it. And that's why you have those 2 shots to JFK's head, one at 313 Zapruder and Zapruder 328, and which is like 0.7 of a second after the first shot. That is, the 4th shot's the killer shot here. And, there were umpteen different witnesses who got sprayed with it. And yet, as I said, Bobby Hargis, who was on his motorcycle, dropped it. And when he got sprayed with blood, brain, and bone, because he was right next to Mrs. Kennedy, and he then ran across the street right to the stockade fence area. Again, all of these exhibits I'm fortunate to have, and I hope you do read the book.
So 5 shots, not 3. What's the strongest evidence? Is it audio? Is it witness or forensic that shatters the official lone gunman narrative, would you say?
Yeah, exactly. I would say, what we're really dealing here with is the kind of scientific evidence that transcends one of, one of these issues of gun, I give another example here. The autopsy at Bethesda, the lies that were told here were, and these are the pieces of the puzzle. When you say which one? Well, you can say, by the way, it was the letter from McClone. That's a piece of evidence that's devastating. Okay. And they try to say it's not a real letter. Now, what is it? Who made it up? Who's wandering around the country saying that they murdered that the CIA participated in the assassination? But there is at page 37, I was able to find out the forensic medical panel report. And what it shows you is how insincere and untrustworthy the entire House Select Committee on Assassinations really was, that select committee. Because at page 37, and I hope people go to it, you can pick that up, they say that regarding the gaping hole in the back of JFK's head, the Parkland doctors, they say, must have been mistaken because they never witnessed an autopsy. The 16 of them were an autopsy in Bethesda. They never witnessed the gaping hole in the president's head. How do you like that? You wouldn't like it if it were true when you were trying the case, but here's the facts. The people who were the witnesses they referred to at Parkland at the autopsy not only witnessed the evulsive wound, that is the back of JFK's head missing, but they reported it to the committee itself. Now, when you have evidence like that and you're trying the case, believe me, it's overwhelming. So it's a total, and again, I think it's important just to note that when we go to look at the truth of what happened at Dealey Plaza, there were two flurries, and that's partially what the witnesses told that the investigating police authorities within an hour of the shooting. But they said they thought there were two shots. In fact, there were three shots. We know that because of the science and the acoustics and other the issues that I mentioned initially. And those shots took 2.6 seconds. Guess what? All of the witnesses who were on the top of that skyway said that it happened very quickly. They didn't know it was 2.6 seconds. 2.6 seconds is not a long time. And then they said there was a delay, a pause. Guess what? Turns out there was a pause for 4.8 seconds to the next shot, and that was the fourth shot. And that fourth shot ballistically tells us exactly what happened to JFK. He was hit above the temple area on the right side of his race course. That's exactly where the location was of the stockade fence. And that is overwhelming evidence, in my judgment, that left him immobile, bodily depressed, and slumped dead. So there are so many different aspects to the case once we truly investigated. I'm just amazed that this hasn't been gone into in more detail by others, frankly.
I want to ask you about something that just came to light, and I'll just get your thoughts on it. I doubt that that it's in the book because, as I say, it just came out. But this is Representative Anna Paulina Luna from Florida asserting that there is previously unreleased video, I believe in the possession of NBC, that shows Oswald near the presidential limo, which sort of lines up with the famous AP, I think it's Ike Altkin's photograph of the Texas Book Depository building in the doorway, ground level, as you see the presidential limo driving by, someone who looks a lot like Lee Harvey Oswald. So you pair that with this alleged video that exists. I mean, that would just blow the lid right off of this once and for all. What do you make of? I think Oliver Stone claims he's seen the video. What do you make of this allegation that this video exists?
Yeah, Anna wanted me to come down to Washington and testify and so on. She was just on the phone with me last week. I told her I don't trust Washington. I removed my family down there to do this investigation, and when we found out what was going on, and it's overwhelming, as I said, with respect to trustworthiness, that they lied. I mean, they went out of their way to tell Richard Sprague and me, when I inquired of this issue, that we didn't want anyone interfering with our investigation. I didn't go down there thinking that we would blow the lid off anything. I didn't know there was a lid to be blown off. It was just something that we went down there to search for truth. And whenever it was, I said to him, if it turns out that the Warren Commission is accurate, we're going to say it. But also, we're going to tell you the truth, what we know and what we don't know. Every one of the members of that committee at the time said, we will not interfere with your investigation. 3 months, after 3 months of working 7 days a week with Sprague, who's a fabulous person, the two of us, as a result of this, had a relationship for 46 years. We worked together on many, many complex cases. And once we knew that they lied and they wouldn't give me the subpoenas necessary to deal with this warrant, to deal with the issue of what the CIA was really doing during this period of time, was it an official act of the CIA to murder the president, or was it just rogue people? Either one is gut-wrenching to think about. Various people who are non-elected officials who in part are, running the government. I mean, and no one should, what I just said, should confuse what Elon Musk is doing. That he's doing a great service, in my judgment, to the American people by disclosing the outrageousness of what they're doing with our money. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Who can't believe in the government anymore? Yeah. When JFK was president, most of us believed in JFK. The whole issue of Camelot. And that was part of what this assassination has done. It destroyed Camelot. And it's given us some kind of phony claim of how the government is working. And it's not functioning the way it's supposed to function. It's like, what happens if we do the Alice in Wonderland and we do the notion that first the trial, then the sentence. And what if it turns out that the defendant was innocent? All the better, says the Queen. So that's where we are with all this. And I have not seen, she never even mentioned to me she had any kind of film. She wanted me to she wanted me to come down, as I said, to testify about what I'm talking to you about. But I've told her she wants to come to my office and I will entertain questions that she has, but I'm not going to Washington. It's not a trip I intend to make again.
LBJ, some have asserted that his fingerprints are all over this assassination. How deep do you think his role went, if at all? Mastermind, accomplice, or just a lucky beneficiary?
Oh, keep in mind a couple of things about Oswald first. What's amazing to me about it is, how did the police get to the defendant in every case? Why in the universe of people do the police believe that the defendant is the guilty person? Oswald goes home in a car. A squad car stops in front of his home, allegedly. He then changes his clothes. It's as if 4 or 5 miles from the murder scene, he's walking on the street. Why is he accosted by the police? He was at the Carousel Club, Ruby's Club, like on the Thursday night before the assassination, or Wednesday, I forget the date, but he was there having dinner with Tippit. So there's a relationship going on that very few people understand and or have expressed. So to me, I still want to know why the police stopped someone walking several miles away from the crime scene, and they said, hey, this is a guy who just murdered the president, but they never told him. Because you remember what he said, I'm getting set up here, and I have not been charged with murdering the president.
Right. This is news to me, that Oswald had dinner at the Carousel Club, Jack Ruby's club, with Officer Tippit the day or the night before the assassination. Is that coming from eyewitnesses? Is there a document that you've got pertaining to that? Where does that come from?
It's a Ruby. I should say it came from Ruby. There was no secret going on here. You don't go to a restaurant anyway. It didn't have to be the Carousel Club. But as you just said, there's a relationship here, which I'm saying, and it has never been determined as to have the degree of the relationship between them.
Okay, can we get back to LBJ? What are your thoughts? Some people see his...
Sprague and I cannot say too many kind words about Richard Sprague. He's brilliant. He was one incredibly wonderful person who searched for the truth and had the same commitment that I had. And we went down every rat hole you can go down to answer these kinds of important questions. There's a lot of information out there that LBJ, went to the CIA when he was sworn in on the plane, and he said, "You want a war? I'm going to give you a war. Don't worry about it." Now, in this war we're fighting now, I just want to mention this as an offhand. There's several $100 billion being spent. It turns out that the American war machine, corporations in our country, have charged over $70 billion on this war that is going on right now. So we chased down the LBJ thing, and it turned out to be nothing. It was puff talk. Same thing with the members of organized crime. Oh, we killed the wrong Kennedy, Yeah, sure. Pass the scotch, will you? That is the kind of stuff that people want to hang their hat on instead of dealing with the hardcore issues of what happened at Dealey Plaza and what is the justification for his head snapping back when the government won't acknowledge it? Is that something we made up? God knows, if I was sitting here and I told you that this head snapped back, and I'm the only person saying that, you would say, well, where's the film of it? Why is he on Zapruder? Zapruder, God bless him. He's there with his associates filming the President of the United States. I mean, how bizarre is that? I'll tell you something else. If it weren't for Zapruder and all of the frames at his camera, 18.3 frames per second, we wouldn't be having this conversation. He gives credibility to the entire issue of what really happened at that time. And it's very troublesome when we deal with another cultural issue here, which is the following. 3 people go to see the Chief Justice at executive session on the record. And they are Henry Wade, the DA of Dallas, Wagner Carr, the Attorney General of Texas, and Leon Jaworski, who we don't know about until 10 years from this point. And they say from unimpeachable sources, their language, Oswald worked for the CIA and the FBI, and indeed he did. And so the Chief Justice said, well, we're certainly going to investigate that. Keep in mind, Earl Warren wasn't some Rhodes Scholar who became the Chief Justice. This was a deal he made with Ike, that he would give a California delegation to Ike when Ike was running for president. And in response, he would get a seat on the Supreme Court. And when the Chief Justice died 9 months later, after Ike was arrested, was sworn in, Earl Warren called him up and said, "Hey, I'm supposed to be getting my job on the United States Supreme Court." And Ike said, "No, you were going to get an associate job, not the chief job." And he said, "No, you can't make that distinction. You can't distinguish that from me. That was never our agreement. It was the next opening." Anyway, I mentioned that because the whole issue of investigating this case then broke down to the following when the Chief Justice said, we'll investigate this. Because again, he was Attorney General of California. He was knee deep in all this stuff. Alan Dulles said, "Not so fast." "What do you mean?" said the chief. Well, Alan Dulles said, hold on record, if you ask J. Edgar Hoover, chief of the FBI, if Oswald worked for them, the FBI, he's going to say, we checked our records and he had nothing to do with the FBI. He's a little nut. And he's the killer. And he's upset with us, said Alan Dulles. Imagine that, he's upset with us because he's already determined what the facts are without an investigation. And so the Chief Justice says, wait a minute. Are you telling me that if I called an agent here to testify under oath, that he would lie? Alan Dulles, if he were a good agent, he would. To which the chief said, well, who was he going to tell the truth to? Maybe, maybe the president. Now, if you're asking me about what's going on with our government, no one should ever claim that what Elon Musk is doing, because when I said unelected people, they might throw him into this thing or running, or have too much authority, obviously. please don't put Elon Musk into that category. What he's doing is a great service to the country as far as I'm concerned. There's yet to be a follow-up of what he's doing with respect to where the money really went. And that's a show for you right there. Did they give it to these nut groups, or did they pocket it? Did they corn beef it? Maybe that's how. Maybe that's how the 3 houses were purchased on the beach by us.
You've described the assassination as a turkey shoot. Can you paint the picture then? How many shooters? Where do you think they were? How did they coordinate?
Now, here's the bottom line to this thing. Again, this was not discussed by anybody else. There is Robert Shaw was the thoracic surgeon that handled Connolly. And he made a determination, as you know, when these analyses are done by the experts, they're talking into a microphone. And he said in the microphone, 27-degree declination, meaning a downward track into Connolly, which no one talks about, what I'm about to tell you. From the rooftop of the Dallas County building, which has a direct look, no trees, no kinds of potential obstructions, no angles. It's a straight shot from the Dallas Records building, from the rooftop to the point of injuring Connolly. Guess what? It's 27 degrees. Now, that's one hell of a coincidence, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
So-called believes in these coincidences that mount up like this. But that is an indication, in my mind, of the second shooter. There was one definitely from that Knoll Hill area where the stockade fence that hit JFK in the head above the right temple area. And there was that shot that hit Connolly in the back. And then again, that 27-degree declination, the doctor, Robert Shaw, had no idea within the first hour of the assassination when he was questioning when he was questioning Connolly, not questioning him, but rather when he was doing his analysis of Connolly, that the 27-degree declination, he didn't know about the other part of that declination. He didn't know that from the rooftop, it was a 27-degree declination that hit Connolly in the back.
So Oswald's interrogation, we have no recordings, no stenographer. I mean, as a former prosecutor, what are your thoughts on his interrogation?
Yeah, that's total incompetence. In the Manhattan DA's office, which was a model office when the District Attorney Frank Hogan ran it, today it's a disastrous nightmare. It's not even a prosecutor's office. It's something different. It's very, very crazy. But we always had stenographers. We had stenographers who were in the employ of the DA's office, because we had night chart, which meant that if, let's say on Friday, you're on from 8 in the morning till 8 in the morning on Saturday. Most of the crime occurs with respect to homicides on Friday night and Saturday night for obvious reasons. And we would have a stenographer, and I would get a call if I were on chart. I never got a call before midnight, by the way. So if I get a call, say at 1 in the morning, bango, I'm dressed, I got my on with the suit and tie. The detective is telling me that the defendant wants to talk, and he's going to pick me up in a squad car and take me to the precinct. I go to the precinct, the stenographer's there. Before I speak to the defendant, I speak to every other witness they had. I ask the detectives to hold on to everybody. Don't write anything down until I see everything that you want to write down. I don't want to be surprised with some dopey comment that is made if it's not accurate. And so there was the stenographer. It was the last person I would speak to with respect to the defendant, so I would have as much information as possible. How can, in this case, see, in my mind, this case is the most important case in criminal justice in the history of our country. Why? We don't know who killed the president in broad daylight at 12:30 in the afternoon at Dealey Plaza. How is that the case? It's mind-bending. And then to have the defendant locked up for like 17 hours, he was being questioned up and back, is mind-blowing. So the truth is, in my mind, they didn't know what to do with all the evidence because they weren't interested in it. This was this whole thing turned out to be a probe, a false probe into a predetermined ending, and they lived with that. And unfortunately, because of however one believes, the evidence came pouring out, and this what I call pretense probe with the predetermined outcome locked in these Warren Commission devotees into positions that are scientifically invalid and fabrications. And that's another sad part of this. But I'm overly delighted that even when the 80,000 pages, notwithstanding my belief it's all been laundered up and down the line, washed, cleaned, totally misrepresenting what the facts are, that the American people, I have always had a great respect for what, we call the flyover. I'm from Brooklyn. I mean, I'm not, there's no flyover in Brooklyn, but it's the same mentality of judging credibility and respecting the rule of law as it applies in cases of this, certainly of all cases, but of this magnitude. You would think someone would come in there and say, hey, this is how we're going to proceed.
If you were prosecuting this case today, who would be in the defendant's chair? Names, agencies, or power brokers? Who?
Well, definitely the CIA operatives, without question. I'd want to know from the head of the CIA why John McCone incriminated the CIA. I mean, it's a confession. So that would definitely be done. I'd have Alan Dulles in that chair. And if he acted up in any way, he would be held in contempt. If he got up, I mean, when David Phillips, who was very much involved in this whole activity with the CIA, he was the third-ranking member of the CIA in charge of Western Hemispheric operations. He definitely would be in that chair. And Phillips had a nom de guerre. I mean, why would the head of the CIA in charge of Western Hemispheric operations have a nom de guerre of in any way? Why was he trying to cover his tracks? Because there were things that he did with his false name, and his false name, by the way, was Maurice Bishop. And the way we found it out, you'll get a kick out of this, I'm sure. I'll take that liberty right now to go on the record for that.
Mm-hmm.
The third-ranking member on the board of a chess game is the bishop. And that's exactly how he put that name together, I found out during the course of this case. The bishop. Every time anyone talks about him, David Phillips, always a third-ranking member of the CIA, in charge of Western Hemispheric operations. It's not like, this is Richard Serra. I'm trying to find the truth. That's why I have my show. I enjoy it. I love it. I do a great job. And but that's not what we're dealing with here. We have people in high-ranking positions working for our government who have false names.
The CIA's history of coups is pretty well documented. How much of their playbook do you see in the planning and execution of November 22nd?
That aspect of things doesn't work the way we always think when there was this perfect execution. There was I've always asked, by the way, I'm always asked, what was the reason for it, for example? Why did it happen? And I hesitate to give an answer, but I will, because that's something that I have not done with respect to all the evidence. The evidence is not my opinion about anything. It's ironclad. And it deals with, how the truth comes forward in all of this. And I just think that what we're dealing with is, I'll give you an example. I mean, Senator Schweiker, Richard Schweiker, you recall him from Pennsylvania. He was involved in an investigation on the church committee with the executive. It was the executive committee analysis of the assassination of President Kennedy that he was investigating as the chair of the subcommittee. The analysis of who the people were involved in this whole thing that we've been talking about. When I was in Washington for the first week in January of 1977, and Sprague and I went to work, he called me to his office and asked to see me. He gave me his file, and he said, the CIA will obstruct and do everything they can to not tell the truth. That's what I found out from my investigation. And he said, and I have to tell you what is heartbreaking. I believe that the CIA participated in the assassination of the president. So it's not just one person listing, what I believe the truth to be. If you were involved in this investigation, you would learn it as I learned, the overwhelming nature of the incriminating aspect of the evidence. And that is something that, even though they try to lie about it up and back, and they've had 62 years, my God. And I think now, more than ever, because of other activity of the CIA that's been discussed publicly, people are more inclined to realize that some unelected people in our government have so far exceeded their authority.
Right.
It's very to the whole democracy.
Well, okay, so the deep state was JFK's murder then its bloody birth certificate? Did it set the stage for 4 decades of unchecked power? Are we talking about essentially a coup?
Well, I mean, that's what it was. I mean, one could call it what they want, but when you line up 2 different shooters and they're shooting basically at the same time, that is, the second shot was within 7/10 of a second. Of the fifth shot was within a half a second basically of the fourth shot, which blows JFK's head off. So there was no coincidence here. They just didn't happen to say, hey, you know what? Where I am, I'm going to do A, B, and C, and not know that there's X, Y, Z being planned at the same time. So this planning was pernicious, and in my mind, definitely involved members of the CIA. I wish that were not the case. It doesn't give me any pleasure. After all, I was a DA when I left the DA's office to go to Washington because my boss had died, and political people decided to come over and take over the DA's office. That's a sure sign of destruction of criminal justice. And, we know there's no Republican or Democrat way to investigate a case or to gather evidence. And once you get into that, you destroy the very fabrication of the truth, which is, anathema to people who care about that. But there's no accident here that those 2 shots came pretty much at the same time. Remember, it's 18 on the Zapruder film. It's 18.3 frames per second. So when you talk about framing, the frames of the film, again, that's to me, it's sort of a concept of believing that maybe someone's trying to help us out there, because it's just not that simple.
So these 80,000 pages, as you say, they've been sanitized, whitewashed. They're not going to provide the truth. Maybe this NBC video, if it exists, will come out. That might essentially seal the deal. In the absence of that video showing Oswald by the limousine, what's it going to take, do you think? I mean, people can read your book, obviously, but what's it going to finally take for the truth to ultimately come out?
There's only one person who can lead and make sure the truth comes out. But he also has to be, and it's not just Trump. I mean, I commend him for wanting to move forward with this, but this is not his strength. His strength is the art of the deal, from beginning to end. God bless him for it. I believe we were saved as a country on November 5th, believe me. And that doesn't mean I listen to him and swear by him. It's just he's a human being who makes terrible, stupid comments on occasion. And some of it's coming right out of the Oval Office. But I commend him for trying to do the right thing here. But if you don't have the expertise, or if you don't have it, you don't get it right, right from the start. I'll give you a quick example of that. Bobby Kennedy's, in my opinion, saved JFK's legacy. In the Bay of Pigs, Nixon had agreed to air cover for the invasion.
Yeah.
And all of the Cubans would come out waving American flags and hugging our invaders. Didn't quite work out that way. But JFK told Bobby, he said to him, I have to use the air cover now. Bobby got him into a room. I have this from unimpeachable source. Got him into a room and he said, you're not going to bomb anyone. If you do, it'll be no different from what the Japanese did at Pearl Harbor. And JFK froze in his tracks and he called off the air cover. To this day, the people who were involved in the Bay of Pigs fiasco celebrate what they did and they curse out JFK. So it takes a president, I think, who has the expertise and can lead, not just say, here are 80,000 pages, now, take your notes on it for the next 10 years, but it can lead us in that direction. And not, and as I said, having a stenographer present when you're questioning the defendant, for crying out loud.
Yeah, that's pretty basic.
Anything that a criminal defendant says who's guilty on the facts, whatever he says is bad for him, whatever it is. You don't have to be Clarence Darrow in order to make your case. Just let him go. Go talk. Tell us what you did or you didn't do. Where were you? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's my feeling about it. We're not out of the game here yet. I don't believe we're out. I don't believe this thing is over by one stretch of the imagination. I do believe that some people will come forward, hopefully, whether they're appointed by the president or not, and be able to go over all the things we've been talking about, which I thank you for personally. I think it's so critical to have you and others like you talking about this stuff, because it's very, very educational. It's very, very informative.
A new Richard Syrett's Strange Planet drops every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.